Hi, everybody. Welcome to another bonus content video. We wanted to dig in, so Martina and I wanted to dig in a little bit into something she brought up in one of her interview videos about code switching. Because some of you might not even know what code switching is. Some of our viewers might not know. And we'll dig into a little bit around the conversation that she brought up around white supremacy and the impact that that's not just had on her life, but I think on a lot of people of color lives and what it continues to do in a historical, but also in the present sense. Thank you for joining us, viewers. And again, my name's Lyzeth, Martina, and we're gonna dig in a little bit. In one of your videos, Martina, you brought up code switching. And my understanding of code switching is really, for me, and I'll be my personal experience, is where I will not sound very myself, and I will transform into, I'll be very 100% transparent, into my white voice. Yep. Very professional and thank you, and very much soft. I'm a little more softer spoken, and just very proper. And, you know, how can I help you? Yes, I will do that. And then when I get home, my voice completely changes, as you can see. My hands become more lively. And I'll, you know, and it's a whole different vibe when I'm talking to my friends, a lot more real, especially those that are my close friends. And then maybe I'll start, you know, diciendo algo en español, and I'll just start talking in Spanish with you.
I'd like to say, translate. Okay, yes.
This, because there is this code that you understand growing up of what white society expects of you. And the expectation tends to be you have to speak a certain way, and you have to let go of what some might call ghetto tendencies in your speech and in your mannerisms. So I love to hear what code switching is to you.
Well, I think similar to what you're saying. I think in a sense it's where people often switch from how they probably talk in everyday life with family and friends, and then switch into what they think is a proper way of speaking in white. It's speaking white, you know, let's say, because I'm sure they're speaking white, they're speaking black, they're speaking Latino. I'm sure we all code switch, and we code switch amongst ourselves too. There's different levels of it. But I think primarily here we're talking about code switching to talking more professional, what's considered more professional and more proper is often equated to white, unfortunately. And so for a lot of people of color, especially I think people who work in a professional environment, just get used to so quickly. And I think even probably growing up, if you grew up around people who didn't necessarily look like you or talk like you probably ended up code switching, even though I'm black, Lyzeth's, you know, Latino. And probably like she started speaking Spanish, that's because that's just what she grew up with. It don't necessarily mean that she's like saying something that she shouldn't be saying, although she might be sometimes. You might be saying something.
I don't want you to know.
You're saying, okay. But I think it's really just when people of color have to switch how they're talking to speak more professional, speak maybe a little bit slower. You don't always use your hands, maybe even sitting a certain way to present yourself as being more receiving by white people. Yeah. And that's really frustrating. It's really frustrating. But I feel like I do it, I don't even know I'm doing it. But then I'll be like, then I'm back to my hands, and it's hard for me not to use my hands. So I have to put my hands away. And I feel like Becky may sit there and be like, whoa, she doing a lot. She gotta, whoa. So I have to calm down. But it's still, why do we continue to perpetuate that? Why do we continue to perpetuate that?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, and I think it's hard. It's exhausting to have to adapt to the situation. And I think especially when you work at nonprofit, I think you experience it a lot more, because there's this whole understanding of like, well, we're depending on donors. We have to act a certain way, and we have to accept certain
and those donors are white.
Yes. There's certain parameters. There's things you don't want to say, like, oh, we can't really use that word. And so I think even as a person of color, you're even more constrained, and you're so much more conscious of what you're saying, and how you represent your community, or just community in general. Because in the spaces that I've been, just throughout my professional careers, just I represent community. Like, I tend to just represent the community at large, like not just the Latino community, but just like, oh, she's the community voice at this table for right now because there isn't anybody around here. And that even brings a whole level of like, oh my goodness, like I represent the communities throughout Chicago or wherever city you're in. And you're like, there's that added pressure. And, by the end of the day, I'm exhausted of just like, either I've been fighting to just try to get some kind of like viewpoint across, or just being like, we need to figure out how do we stop this idea of like having to adapt the community needs or my needs to whatever X, Y, and Z think, wants or thinks it's important.
That's such a good point. Such a good point.
And I think even like as we talk about code switching, like why do I have to adapt to a structure that was built by white men who
boom
these ridiculous expectations of what the general population should be acting and should be saying and how they should be dressing, like how should they, and it's like this whole ideal of like that structure was created by white men. And it's to me it's just ridiculous, unattainable, and just needs to go out the door.
And you know what? It's so interesting. Tell me how you feel like, say, like you are interviewing for a position or for a donorship or anything. And how do you feel if you see another Latina in the room? Do you feel you still have to, I think interviews are different anyway. You want to be as professional, but still, professional is still considered white. So do you want to be as, I don't know, in a sense, do you feel if you have another Latina in the room that you can be a little bit more free, or do you still feel the need that you gotta be on?
I would say it depends. If it's just me and another Latina, and I think there's a little more of like a realization of like, okay, we can be ourselves and we can have this conversation. And obviously, I think we always test the waters to see like, is she cool? Like, can we? Like, I think we test the waters, and then when we figure out, like, yeah, she's cool, she's my people, like, let's do this. But I think if there's other people in the room, like if it's a larger meeting, maybe there are other people of color, I think we all have this understanding of, like, we can't get down with each other, and we can't even test the waters right now. Like, we're just going to play our role, and we're going to talk how we talk, and I always stand up a little straighter. I try to, in this, like I said, like, I become a lot more soft-spoken. Like, there's this whole idea that, everything just becomes softer, and I become smaller sometimes. And as you know, I'm quiet as it is. I'm very much I take in the conversation and I process it in my brain, and everything. It's a little slower, sort of my reaction to things, and even that plays against me sometimes, even just being a Latina and being an introvert, like, and having that sort of slower processing time. And I'm like, I need to go back and just chill on this conversation for a little bit, but then I'll have hopefully I think I have some really great ideas, and I'll share those. But I think that plays into that, like, well, I think I accidentally play into that whole role of like, they need to just be in the background. They need to and like, oh, they can't be too, like, and it's just like, you can't be too, loud, because if you
can't use your hands,
and I think that's played into me even as an introvert to be like, okay, well, I can't be too loud right here. So I'll just wait for what I think is the right time, or I've been conditioned to think it's the right time to say something. So that's even something that I've had to, as an adult, learn how to navigate and how to assert myself better in like larger meetings or just group settings, where it's like, okay, I do have the right to speak up if I have an idea without being worried that, you know, the white people in the room are going to be like, oh my gosh, why is she, you know, talking some, or why is she like being so aggressive about it? Because girl, you know me, when I'm passionate about something, my passion will
you 100%. Quiet, but when you get on a roll about something, girl, you going.
You know, and you know, and I think, and I've had to figure out how to navigate that even within this code switching world that we live in. But yeah, to answer your question, I think it just depends. Like, there's a Latina in the room, it's one-on-one, and I know we can get cool. Girl, I'd be having some of the best conversations when it's just another, whether it's a Latina, a Black woman, or even like a Black man. Like, I'd be having some of the best conversations because we kind of test the waters, and then we're like, yes, we can dig into what's really important here.
You know, you and I have the same person with an organization that we both work with on a daily basis, and there's a person of color there, one of those that we deal with, and it's so interesting talking to that person when white people are not around, and and you know how I feel about this person, you know, I know how you feel, and I've been going back and forth. Is this person that I can like start to accept more because they are Black? And it's so interesting talking to them one-on-one, and they might just feel comfortable because we're both Black and we can both just lay it out. But it's just so interesting when we get in front of other folks, who can change. And it's just, I just want us as Black, brown people to stop doing that. And I understand, like, that's so much easier said than done. And I'll end up doing it tomorrow on a call. It's just what it is.
For sure. Like, on an email. It doesn't have to be a call. On an email, I come through different.
Oh my God. Even the way you preference an email, it's just, oh my God. It's just this white supremacy culture is just really ingrained in everything that we do. And I just really want to get away from that. But it's like, it's so hard to do because it's almost if you take that away, it's almost like, what are people going to do? Because everything is built upon that.
Yeah. The one thing that I definitely hate, I'll just say I hate, is when someone comes and says to me, well, we can't have that particular conversation, whether it's around, you know, health equity or, you know, racism or what's best, you know, what do we feel is best for community or how does, and says like, well, we can't have that conversation when the group is predominantly white because they might not understand it or they might not know it. But I was like, well, that's exactly why we should have the conversation. Even if they know nothing about it. If you don't know anything, great. Let's talk about why you don't know anything. Exactly. Like, let's talk about why you don't, like what your privilege has given you the ability to not have to know about it or have to navigate on a regular basis, you know, and how these systems and these structures that have been created by, you know, white ideals have allowed you to not have to experience this or have to think about it in your personal life. You might come through it in your professional life because obviously I think even now with all of the COVID instances and the civil unrest and everything that's been happening with police brutality, it's had people to have to, like, it's in your face.
They have to
front it. But you know, to have people say in my sphere of kind of world to say like, well, you know, maybe we should have a pause on it because they might not have anything to add or it might be uncomfortable. And I'm like, I want people to be uncomfortable because I'm uncomfortable almost on a daily basis.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to get in that Black and brown people stop tiptoeing around white people thinking that, oh, well, if I say this to Becky, she might go back and tell this person when I lose that. So what? So you've been conditioned to behave this way because you're worried about this, that, and another. But just like I was talking to you earlier, I was talking to one of my stakeholders last week, and it was basically like white people mainly have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable because Black and brown people have been made to be uncomfortable since the beginning of fucking time, at least here in the United States. Yeah. And just get comfortable with it. Like, and if you don't have anything to say, that's cool. Listen, because y'all have been talking for so much now. Just sit back and listen. You know, that's one of the best things we all can do. Listening is fundamental. Listen.
Both, I think both. I think both, you know, people of color and white individuals have to listen. I think sometimes I feel like people of color tend to be very like, oh, I know it, I experience it, but it's like, well, we got to also listen and be open to hearing other people's perspectives, no pun intended, but just to hear and be like, okay, let's be open to having that conversation. I think sometimes I'll be like, oh, I don't want to have this conversation, or like, that's just dumb. Like, that's dumb thinking, but it's more like, okay, they're thinking that way because they haven't known any different, right? Like, they haven't. So can we dig deeper into that? Can we dissect it? Can we do it together? Or just be like, hey, I don't want to have this conversation right now until you've had an opportunity to just learn a little bit on your own. But let's have this conversation next week. You know, once you've had a time to explore it, Google some things, read a little bit on it, read some articles around whatever the topic may be, and you know, and give me the ability to think through whatever the conversation might be. And let's regroup and have an actual conversation versus let me judge you for not knowing something as a white person, and just calling, just being like, okay, I'm done with this. Like, I don't want to have this. Versus,
that's a big thing of you, Lyzeth, because I'm working up to that point, because
I know,
like I mentioned, I'm tired of woke white people right now. And just like, I understand people wanting to know, and I respect the fact that people, white people are, you know, some of them are really trying to learn and know more, but it's like, we're not a different species. We're still human. You know, I really think white people don't know how to move right now. Some of them are trying to figure it out, but it's almost like, that's too much. You're doing too much. Like, trying to move and navigate, honey, I'm just a human being. Like, if you just treat somebody human, it's cool. But I understand, like,
courtesy, as you said.
Common courtesy. Treat somebody how you want to be treated.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. Treat them how you want to be treated. Okay.
That's what Jesus said.
That's what Jesus got, a girl. Me and Jesus get along, honey. He turned water into wine, and you know, he's done so much in my life, and my parents, we get along.
Yes.
But I'm just like, yeah, treat people how you want to be treated. And if you have to think about that, then you need to really sit with yourself and try to figure out why. Yeah. And do you always treat people how you want to be treated, specifically around color and things of that nature? But because at some one point I was just like, I don't want to talk about another white person. I don't want to teach them nothing. I don't want to tell them nothing. That, like you said, that's what Google's for. Go out and talk to Google first. Then you can talk to me. But I was just used to be like, no, I'm just like, I can't. You acting like this is some race or something. I'm trying to figure it out. Oh my God, just calm down. Calm down. It's okay.
I mean, we didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to get overnight. It's a long-term battle. Like, this is in order to get to the other side, it's not, I mean, I don't even see it changing like people in a year or two. Like, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of years of this is not going to change in a year or two. Like, we're talking, I mean, these are things that are ingrained into our legal system, and you know, and into our Constitution, Bill of, like, everything that, you know, created this country was based on, you know, really just white supremacy and this idea that it's just going to uplift primarily white males, because it didn't include females. It didn't include,
it's just white men, really. That's
white men to begin with. And I mean, to talk about, you know, civil rights and who really profited from that and had the privilege around that. I mean, I think white women won a lot from the civil rights movement, more so than Black and brown people. But I think, you know, and I'd love to hear, you know, any of our viewers that are watching this, like, what are your thoughts? What are your opinions when it comes to, you know, this topic of, like, you know, white supremacy and code switching? Like, how's that reflected in your life if you're a person of color? If you are a white person watching us, how does it make you feel, or what are your thoughts around it? Like, you know, whether you agree with us or not, like, if you don't agree with us, please write it and let us know. just don't be mean. Don't be mean in the comments, because we want to create a space where we can have actual conversations.
You can be real, but don't be mean.
But don't be mean and nasty to people, because we won't stand for that. Like, we're not here for that. But yeah, I mean, any last thoughts before we kind of close out around this, or what are your hopes for the future?
Oh, that's such a broad and like big question. Like, I like go big or go home. Well, obviously the thing is, like I said, we have to, hoping with everything that's going on in the world, we really are going to make concrete, actionable steps to correct things, not just going out and protesting and burning things and looting stuff, but really sitting down and having conversations. And because I think this is really the most, I know my mother, who was born in the 60s, has said this is the most that she has seen, that she can recall, that from like civil unrest and just things going on across the world. She said she's never seen anything like this before. And so she has some hope that something positive is going to come out of it. And like I said, it's going to take a long time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be a few years. It may not even be 10 years. I may not even live to see it. But it doesn't mean we have to stop. Like, we need to keep having these conversations, and these conversations turn into actions, because that's what I'm at right now. I'm tired of talking about everything. It's like, we know these injustices exist. Mm-hmm. They have always existed. It's just that we can record everything now and put it on the internet. This is nothing new. Now it's really, what are we going to do about it? And I say we is everybody, really. And it really is going to take creating new ways of thinking and new ways, conditioning people, for the better.
Yeah. I think I'll just add on, I think one of the things that I hope to see from everything that's going on is just becoming better allies for each other. Whether you're Black, brown, white, yellow, purple, whatever color. I think it's just being better allies and learning what it means and showing up when it's needed, but also having those hard conversations with those you don't agree with. Because it's those conversations that need to happen more and more. Because if we just stick to our bubble of like, yes, we agree with each other, and and not having those conversations with those that we don't agree with, then we might not ever see any change, because we can't have fruitful conversations, not just yelling at each other and arguing, but just like these just fruitful, smart conversations to kind of get through. And to your point, I think we definitely need those long-term solutions. I mean, you and I talk about policies all the time and how we need to change a lot of those systems that have been in place, and what does that look like. So I think that's really what I hope for. And I just ask our viewers, like, what do you hope for when it comes to this topic? Share with us what you hope for and what you would like to see the next, few years, 5-10 years. And like Martina said, we might not even be alive to see it come to fruition. But, what are your suggestions? What are your ideas that, would be great to kind of see on a national scale, or even in your community? What does doing this work look like in your neighborhood, in your block? Like, what does that look like?
Starting with yourself and your community and your block, your family.
Yes. So thank you all for joining us.
Yeah.
Appreciated. Give us a like if you enjoyed watching this bonus content, and subscribe if you haven't had a chance to do so. And we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.